Good morning. I am here with
Good morning.
Ryan from First Horizon, and this morning we're going to be talking about fraud. And the reason we have Ryan involved is Ryan and I went through a situation, well, it was probably about a year or so ago now. I don't want to mention the association specifically, but it was a large association, and there was a fraud situation that happened, and it really was not even something that was in anyone's control that was one of the parties directly involved with the association. It was a situation that involved the Postal Service and a mailbox. And anyway, Ryan, I don't know if you can maybe give us a little background on it.
Yeah.
Some history.
No, absolutely. Unfortunately, I remember that situation very well. So, as the bank, we have a lockbox facility that processes homeowners and condominium owners associations, their checks that come in for their dues. And, they're set in various locations without the bank footprint. We have one here in Naples, we have one in Charlotte, we have one in Atlanta, etc. This one in question happened to be in our Charlotte lockbox facility that, unfortunately, there was somewhere between the U.S. Postal Service and our lockbox, there was someone that was taking or not bringing all the mail to our lockbox. So checks were being stolen, essentially. So while we did get some of them and they processed as is, there was a whole, only 30% of the unit owners, maybe 40% of the unit owners got their checks compromised.
Right. And in this case, that was a very large association because there was... It
was.
This was like a 1,000+ unit association.
Yeah, and it's a bad look on everyone's part. And after a lot of research and investigation, we found out that there was an issue with the U.S. Postal Service in Charlotte. And there was an investigation with the Postmaster General. We ended up finding out that there was an employee within the Postal Service that was taking checks out of the mail, using those for their own purposes to either wash them, change the payee, deposit them in a different account, or what's worst of all is get the account numbers off the checks and then pay their own bills, do whatever they want to do with it. So in that situation, it's unfortunate because we do everything we can to protect the information of our clients and homeowners. But if we're not receiving the items in the mail, we haven't even touched them yet. And, they've been compromised. And everybody thinks when they put a check in the mail that the post office is, I would say 90, maybe 95% of the time they do get from where they should go to where they need to be. But there are some circumstances where they don't. And unfortunately, we experience that.
Yeah. When you think about it, it is kind of amazing. So right now, how much is a stamp? It's a little less than $1, I think, at this point. They've gone up quite a bit.
They've gone up quite a bit from what they used to be.
I want to say they're right around 80 cents or something like that.
I think so.
Stamps. But still, for 80 cents, we're able to mail something from Southwest Florida to California and send a letter.
Yeah.
And so that is pretty incredible that the post office is able to do that, even at that price point. But I think what a lot of folks have come to realize is that the post office is not infallible. And there are issues where things either get lost or go missing or get extremely delayed. So for our residents, what is something that we can try to offer them to help on this side of fraud? So what would have been a solution that we could help with for you're mailing your check in? What options do they have?
So that's a great question. Anytime where you can remove middle people from the check process is going to be helpful for the check ultimately or your payment getting to where it needs to be. So in this situation, if there was an electronic payment option, whether it's an ACH or a credit card, not only is your payment going to be processed in a quicker fashion and on time, you're eliminating the multiple hands that are touching your check when you drop it in the mailbox. Put it in the mailbox, the person's taking it from your mailbox to the post office, it's being sorted. So there's a lot of hands and a lot of opportunity for that item to get either misplaced or in the wrong hands, and something happens, your accounts are compromised. We had a situation the other day, and it was total nothing to do with any of the associations that we talked about in the past, but we just got a batch of mail that was from 2019 that just showed up last week. It was a whole tray of envelopes that were postmarked 2019. I want to say it was like September of 2019, and they just showed up. So during that process, the bank's getting the finger pointed, the management company's getting the finger pointed, and lo and behold, it was sitting at the post office somewhere. So that is stuff we see as well.
So going to what a check is, this is a little bit of a side trip, but I've always been fascinated by the history of checks and exactly what a check is. So a check is just a piece of paper. I was looking for a piece of paper on my desk. All I have is a salt packet. So really, there's nothing special about a check anymore, right? Even back in the day, so we'll talk about the MICR line on the bottom, right? There you go. You've got a check.
Yeah.
So,
That's it.
it's a check.
Yeah.
It's not special paper.
No.
I know that there's been a lot of, when we obviously produce checks internally for all of our clients, and, we do have the paper that you touch, and when it gets warm, it shows a little emblem or something,
Sure.
that property check. But I feel quite certain of two things. The first is that very likely no teller who's receiving that check is actually putting her finger on there to heat it up to see if that happens or not.
Mhm.
And even if they did, that paper's fully available. We bought it. Anybody can buy that,
Yeah.
right? So if you wanted to produce
Anybody
your
can
own
buy it.
checks, you can. And what you're producing it on, the bottom of the check, the MICR line, which MICR, I believe, stands for magnetic ink, something.
Yeah. I have an actual, let me give an example if I can find it. I will pass on that one, but I'll have to probably pass. Oh, no, here it is. So there's even tools like this that you can get, which will ultimately tell you how to line up your MICR.
Yes.
This is an older school. I think this is from the 80s, but this is a thing that you place your check under, right? And then you can tell exactly where your MICR is supposed to be set up. To your point, Adonia, there's not a whole lot of technology behind that.
So, and even the MICR itself, that ink has now moved to, it's not even magnetic anymore. They use optical recognition on those MICR lines. So having a check stolen and having it intercepted and all that creates a whole set of issues. But if somebody has your account number, they're going to be able to create checks. And the thing is, every check you write has your account number on it. So even though an account number is a sensitive piece of data and we don't want to put it out there to the world, every time we write a check, we put that account number out to the world.
Yeah,
and there's no way around it.
The banks go to great lengths to prevent account numbers. When someone calls in and asks what their account number is, there is a very long process of security questions that we ask the customer before we'll release an account number. Yet you write a check to anyone and you're putting your account number out there in the world with little to no security around that. You pay your painter, you pay your lawn person, you pay whoever it might be, you're handing them a check with your account number, which is access to your account. So yeah, I mean, that information's out there all over.
So and this is an Adoniism, I think that the entire financial system is kind of based on trust. It's based on, if I, Adoni, write you, Ryan, a check for $10,000, you're trusting that I have $10,000 in my bank account. You then take it to your bank where you deposit it. That bank is trusting that the other bank is going to honor it and send it back. And it's really not until that check reaches my bank after I've given it to you that they determine if that money is there and they transfer it all through. Correct?
Correct.
And that's why it takes a
few days. And that can happen between 1 and 3 days, really, is what we see before the transfer is fully there. That's why, when you go to the bank and you deposit that $10,000 check, all you're doing is handing the teller a piece of paper.
Exactly.
They have no idea if the funds are there. They have no idea. There's a lot of variables that the banks look for to know if we're going to advance the funds to that person prior to it being collected.
So one of the things that I think we've become a very big fan of in my industry is using ACH, using automatic payments. Now and again, this is a whole system based on trust. And the problem with that is fraud is the complete opposite of trust, right? So you're taking a system based off of trust and we're introducing what busts it all up. So now we use the idea of ACH, and ACH has a lot of positives. One of the biggest ones is, you mentioned getting rid of that third person. Now we no longer have the post office involved. But oftentimes ACHs have third-party administrators that are involved in that ACH transfer. And when that happens, it's that third party, and actually, I don't want to make this more complicated as well, but there's almost like a third and fourth party involved.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got the management company who's handling setting up an ACH based off of whatever terms the owner has agreed to. And then there's oftentimes a system that's involved that's handling that ACH as well. And that system, it's tracking the account number and the routing number for each owner, along with usually a unique identifier. And now what's happening there is the money. So with ACH, my understanding is it's almost like in my head, I imagine it like the claw machines that you put $1 into that you get a prize.
Yeah.
we put $1 in, it goes over, it drops down, it picks something up out of a person's account, it brings it back, and then it drops it off into what is usually an association account.
Sure.
And then when it drops
It's a
it
good
off,
way to look at it.
it assigns a number. And then in our system, that number, it links to an account so that we know when we dropped off that, bobblehead or whatever, that it belonged to this person and it was transferred in. The dangers there, though, are that I think we usually call it a notcha file, which is, I don't want those. We've established that a notcha files give a donor indigestion. They are one of the most sought after hacked things out there.
Well, yeah, because you have everything.
Yeah, and I was reading actually about hack attempts, and the two things that they try to access the most are databases of email. So they want access to be able to send out emails in bulk. So if you've got an email server that can send out an email to huge groups of people, that's number one. And that's because you can try to manipulate people with that information, right? You say, you owe us money, and you send it out, and people all of a sudden pay. And then number two is these notcha files, because they're just a treasure trove of very easy to access ACH information.
Sure.
So what are the best ways to try so we got rid of the post office. What are the best ways to try to protect, and what types of fraud do we see in ACH first? And what are the best ways to try to protect from those frauds?
Sure. So I'm going to go back to what we talked about just for a second with the post office, just because it's going to lead into the next topic. So when a check is compromised, you see various types of attempts to steal the individual's money. The first thing we usually see is checks that are made that you print on your LaserJet printer at your office, and you try to cash checks under someone else's name. That typically leads into the next one. Now you have your account number and routing number, and usually you have the person's name and address. So now they attempt to do the ACH route, right? So they have that information like you spoke about. They can come in and use the claw and drop the bobblehead in your office, but now it's a fraudulent ACH, right? So they have the information to make a payment or to try to extract money from the individual's account with that information they got from the check. So there's usually the two stages of fraud that we see, and that's why from the bank side, we're so adamant about having accounts closed once they're exposed to check fraud, because we usually see the following, which is ACH. ACH fraud is a very quick way to get people's money. And that's what people have to be the most diligent about, is checking their bank accounts, daily, usually, because once an ACH hits, it usually keeps going until the party's over. So again, that kind of leads into, that was part of the first thing with the checks and how that progresses into greater fraud. But to answer your question, Joni, what can people do? You're really as good as who you're providing the information to. And let's face it, some of the Fortune 500 companies around the world have had their information hacked. So the hacking's out there. It's not if, it's when something's going to happen, but it's just making sure that you secure your information when you're paying your condo association dues, and you log on to use a secure browser. A VPN would be great, because it further prevents people from watching what you're doing. But again, it's just logging into a trusted source, paying or going forward with your payment, and then monitoring your bank account. Unfortunately, we live in a world where you're never going to be 100% insulated from an attempted fraud attack.
Got it. So obviously you work with fraud often.
Every day.
What's the craziest thing you've seen so far?
Craziest thing we've seen so far when it comes to wires. Wires are a whole nother beast of an animal with fraud. A lot of times is what happens we see with wires, and the dollar amounts I'll tell you about in a second are frightening. Donnie, I'll use you and I an example, right? You and I are communicating. We talk every day via email. We're doing business together. I know Adoni's email. Adoni knows my email. One day something happens. It's a Friday typically. You're getting ready to go. You're caught off guard. Well, Adoni's email is hacked, and he says, "Hey, Ryan, it's Friday afternoon. I'm trying to pay my whatever the case might be. Just had a new bank account opened. Do you need to update the numbers?" Fortunately, the bank are here now. They're busy. They got stuff going on. It's Friday. They're probably thinking about where they're going on Friday afternoon. They're like, "No problem. I know Adoni. I'll get the money out." Well, now you just did a wire transfer to an account that's not Adoni's. So when that happens, when a wire transfer leaves the bank, it's pretty much gone. That's the point of the wire, right? That's why you use them for closings, and that's why you use them for transactions where someone can't go home all of a sudden and say, "Oh my God, I had second thoughts. I don't want to buy that boat, or I don't want to buy that whatever on the water. I want my money back." Well, wires don't work that way. We had an incident in the bank where that happened. Can't name names, but it was a loss of around $4.5 million to the company. Wow. Various procedures weren't followed on both sides, the bank and the employee and the employer, the company that we deal business with. It was not me, or I wouldn't still be sitting here. And yeah, unfortunately, a wire was transferred, and the money was sent out. And now you're playing try to recover. And I can tell you, 95% of the time, you're not getting those funds back. So we are very, very, very strict with wires, and it can be cause some frustration to our clients because we typically require them to sign a document in person and verify that everything is accurate. I'd say typically there's always one-off scenarios, but our main goal is to protect the money that's here at First Horizon and our clients' money. That's why we're extra diligent when we're sending money out of our walls to make sure it's going to where it needs to be going to. So craziest thing that I've seen with fraud typically is around wire transfers.
At Newell, we generally speaking do not allow wire transfers. We had a situation, this was years ago now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, one of our largest clients, and they were doing a large project and they insisted on these wire transfers because the vendor they had selected would only accept payments via wire. This was a major lake construction project. And a similar thing happened. And one of the links in the chain, their email address was hacked. And we had several links in the chain for approval, and they created a fake document for all of the prior links in the chain and sent it on, and it just kept processing through. And at the end of the day, it was myself who would be the one to actually go to the bank and do the wire, because we don't allow wires over the phone at all.
Smart.
And something felt very off because the pressure that was being put on me by this particular director was completely out of the sorts. Like, if I don't get this out, he's going to fire me. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to say his name, but I was like, he must be having a really bad day. And we did determine that the numbers for the wire had been changed. So they had it was a document that had gone through, the engineer had gone through everybody to the bank loan. So the bank had funded the loan, and it was about $1 million, but the wired bank number had changed. And we realized it when I was at the bank. I'm like, this is getting really sketch. And we did not go through with it.